Welcome to Gen X Mindscape, the podcast dedicated to exploring the complexities of midlife and the pursuit of a purposeful life. I'm your host and fellow Gen Xer Kyle, here to accompany you on this journey. Today, we'll be diving deep into a topic that is incredibly important and relevant to many of us in midlife: body image. Today, I will be talking with Dr. Rachel Rogers of Northeastern University in Boston. We will be seeking to better understand body image in midlife, challenges to having a positive body image in midlife, and how to promote a positive body image in ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities. Talking about body image can be a difficult topic, especially in midlife when, as if we don't have enough transitions to navigate, our bodies happen to be going through a transition too. So that's exactly why I wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront. I really am incredibly thankful Dr. Rachel Rogers has been so generous with her time and is joining us today. So welcome, and thank you so much, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Kyle. It's my pleasure.
Yes. Well, let's get to it. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about body image and why it's such an important topic to our lives?
Yes. Body image is the subjective experience somebody has of being in their body and how they evaluate their body. So it's important to distinguish from somebody's appearance. That's something that you can see. You cannot see their body image because that is their own internal experience of being in themselves. So we're not talking about people's appearance here. We're talking about their inner experience of that. Body image is important in a number of ways. One of them, I believe, is that our society is increasingly moving towards a place where appearance is capital in terms of financial, social capital in a number of ways.
Yes.
And therefore, this makes physical appearance salient to people. And because the visual environment is very saturated in images that are highly unrealistic and offer appearances that are unattainable to most people, a lot of people's experience of being in their body is of being in one that doesn't look like what they're seeing in those.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's such an important topic, and wanted to get into the particulars of midlife and concerns about body image in midlife. What do we know about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say, midlife is a loose conceptualization. Let's imagine it's somewhere between the age of 40 and say 65. There's really a firm boundary there. But it's a time of life, as you're saying, where there are a number of transitions, and those can include having children, and that might be a physical experience for you or another type of experience, but it's an important one either way. And then there are social roles. Towards the end of midlife, there might be changes in terms of work, retirement, and then some people may be going through menopause or equivalents of it, hormonal changes of some sort. So there are a lot of things going on. Yeah. And appearance ideals, as we were just talking about, are not only unrealistic, but they're also incredibly youthful. And therefore, as people age, inevitably, they move away from this very youthful ideal. And that can lead to concerns with things that are specific to aging, like hair or tone or skin quality, complexion, all of those types of things. We know that as people get older, the way that weight distributes on the body also changes. And that can lead to you being read socially as it belonging to a different age group. And so all of these things can affect that. In terms of how prevalent it is, unfortunately, we don't have good data on this developmental period, let's call it.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but it affords a lot more investigation and research. Given, however, that we know that there are these unrealistic ideals and that most people are moving away from them, I think it's fair to say that many people will have some level of concern, dissatisfaction. And we do know that for a small group of people, this actually becomes quite impairing and severe.
Yeah, as I was talking about this interview with some of my closest friends, I think it is something that it's another one of those topics that we just don't talk about. And so we think we're the only ones, which makes it worse. What factors do we want to be aware of that can make midlife body image difficult?
So we know that body image is affected by things at multiple layers. So there will be genetic and epigenetic and personality factors, and then there are social ones, and all of this contributes. If we think about some of the big contributors, and particularly some of the ones that are modifiable, which are often the ones we're most interested in, there are some of them that are at the personality level that include things like perfectionism. People who tend to be more perfectionistic, more anxious, are also likely to feel that way about their bodies. Then there are things like the degree to which one adheres and ascribes to this idea that there is really only one way to work and that some bodies have more value than others. We call that internalization of the ideal. And so the degree to which one internalizes that ideal is going to be a risk factor for having concerns. The degree to which appearance is central to you as a person, so your investment in appearance, is also going to modulate things a bit. And that, of course, it's not only a factor of who you are. It might also be dependent on what your social position is, what your profession is. Some people's professions are intimately tied to the way they look, and therefore for them, clearly this is going to be a very central part of who they are. For other people, it might be less.
Yeah, I was interested in how you talked in your article that we sometimes compare with our younger selves.
Mm-hmm. So our understanding is that people's trait level of investment in these ideals and how important it is to them is then activated as they move through the world through things like appearance comparisons, which can be with other people that they're seeing. You know, you're in a social situation, you're seeing other people, or you're watching a movie, but it can also be with our memory of a younger self. And I think in midlife, that's definitely something that comes up because, you know, maybe you're going, let's say, a reunion of a group of people you haven't seen for a while.
Yes.
But there's been COVID and for whatever reason, you haven't seen people for a bit. And so comparisons to the way that you think you looked before last time you were in that situation are likely to come up. And people who do a lot of that comparing, or who believe that they're doing poorly in terms of that comparison, and that's their experience, are likely to have more concerns.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. And for me, just having that self-awareness is just really helpful. That I have been trying to train myself not to compare with others, and now I have realized I have to not compare to my own younger self as well. I think for some people, seeing their bodies aging can kind of make them confront mortality too, which I know is something that you have written about.
Absolutely. The aging of the physical body is in some ways the external sign of the fact that we are aging and we are all mortal. And so even in people for whom appearance is perhaps not something that gives them a strong sense of self and who are critical and resistant to these appearance ideals, can still see those signs of aging as a reminder of time passing and the fact that we're moving in one direction. And so that can bring up a lot of anxiety. It is absolutely normal to have anxiety about the idea of death and passing away. Yep. It's something that is also slightly taboo in society. We don't all spend a lot of time at dinner parties talking about how we feel about our lives. And, you know, if we have resolved our existential anxieties and are at peace with the world, we probably should do more of that.
That's right. In terms of living a good life, you know, for me, it's embracing reality, which is really a major goal for a lot of us, I think. So I just love that point.
I agree. Not wanting to get too far off topic, but I would actually take that a little further. I think that appearance ideals are not random, right? They're political and economically driven.
Yes.
And one of the reasons for which appearance ideals are youthful is that they serve as a way of containing existential ideals and denying death.
Right. Yes.
And in the same way that the body is positioned as a project. So we are all socialized to be trying to look our best, right? To be trying to move towards the ideal, even as we know that it is impossible. And therefore we participate in that process by consuming products and services. And we are virtuous by doing so, even if we never get to the ideal. And therefore, this is also a way of containing existential anxiety by focusing it on something that's very controllable, i.e., are we exercising? Are we eating?
Yeah.
It's all related, and it all, as you say, takes us away from an embodied perspective where we're actually attuned to what is going on in our bodies and its needs, because, needing rest, for example, is another kind of way of saying one day I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And so the more we can deny that, the more we can be part of grind culture. Yeah,
that is such an amazing point. That is spot on, like a motto for this podcast. So thank you, Rachel. Yes, it is about embracing reality, and it's about being aware of your experiences and your influences, and making your own decisions at this point, being wiser, not being a child that just swallows it up whole and isn't aware of it, and moving forward with the time that we've got. Any other factors that we want to be aware of that makes midlife body image difficult?
Yeah, there's one point that I also want to bring up, and that's the idea of someone's social and sexual capital as related to appearance. And this is something that changes through midlife, and as people start noticing it change, that can be an important moment as well. And it doesn't have to be a negative moment. And I think this is one of the really interesting things, is that if we think about the way that body image and appearance are gendered, one of the things that we notice, for example, is that women and gender minorities tend to experience a lot more sexual objectification. Their value is reduced to their appearance to a greater extent than happens to men. It happens to men too, but more so in women and gender minorities. And therefore, as the aging process occurs, though that process of objectification lessens because people's sexual capital decreases, and that can be experienced as a real relief. Somebody who has spent their life feeling unsafe because of the way that they are perceived by other people as attractive and being catcalled and those types of things, can find it really enjoyable to no longer be submitted to that gaze and that social experience, and to benefit from the invisibility that aging gives them.
Wow.
For other people, it can be a huge loss.
Yeah.
Of a way that they were recognized, of a way that they interacted with people that was pleasurable, that gave them a sense of value, and that is now no longer there and won't really be recoverable.
Right. Wow. Two big sides of the coin there. Then your paper that I found was in particular on men. And would you talk just a little bit about, can you give us some insight on that as well?
Yes. So I think a couple of the particularities for men are, firstly, that to some extent they have been protected from these appearance pressures due to being men. At the same time, there are particular aspects of appearance that they might be sensitive to. For example, one of the things that is strongly associated with masculinity is muscularity. And as men age, as with anybody else, they will gradually start losing muscle tone and body shape will change. And that can be something that is concerning. They may also have receding hairlines and other things that are related to aging. And those specific aspects can also be concerns that are gendered. It may also be that they have an experience in which there is sort of a disconnect in terms of their social capital compared to the women in their lives because they're socialized differently. And so that can be an experience. And then, of course, we also know that people's relationships flow during life. And I think something that is really interesting to think about and that we should know more about is how that and aging are wrapped up. I mean, for men and for anybody else, but we know that such a large proportion of relationships end at some point, many of them in midlife, and that therefore there's also kind of a tension point there of things going on.
Yeah, I'll just admit I can really relate to that. And this is one of the questions that I've been working through as I've thought about talking with you is I'm lucky. I feel healthy. I enjoy going to the wellness center. I enjoy lifting weights for a number of reasons. One is I enjoy the experience. It makes me feel stronger. I know that it's good for me in terms of helping me, my longevity and my energy. But part of it too is it affects how I look, right? And so I've been trying to reconcile that a little bit in terms of, doing it for the right reasons, but also having that, I don't know, I'll call it anxiety, body image anxiety. I don't know the right term. That is a mini motivator there as well. We can edit this out if that doesn't make sense, but what would your reaction to that be?
It makes perfect sense. I mean, my reaction is that seems very human. I think one of the really difficult things in this area is that you can recognize that appearance ideals are political, that they serve the interests of those who already hold power and privilege, that they're a part of gatekeeping, that they're, oppressive.
Yes, yes.
We live in a society where that is a fact of life, and therefore it's also entirely human to want to reap the benefits when the benefits are there,
right?
And to feel pressure from a system and to be responsive to those pressures.
That's right.
It's not an easy situation.
It isn't, but this might sound weird, but I think let's be the generation here and let's see if we can, move the culture in a different way, even in our small ways, in terms of, like you said, being aware of the system and embracing a different way, if at all possible. So let's transition to talking a little bit about where we might go from here. What are some healthy ways to approach body image in midlife?
Yeah. Well, I think that there are some things that are inward facing, and then there are some things that are more outward facing and sort of moving towards that activism. But in terms of one's own equilibrium, I think it can be helpful to remind yourself of the fact that an aging body is a good thing to have. It means you're still alive and you're still aging, and that's right. A good thing.
Yes, I'm making that into a bumper sticker here, Rachel. Very nice.
And so, that there is a place where an aging body is a success. It's a series of wins. You've got this far.
I love it.
And the idea that bodies don't age or that they continue to look youthful and polished and perfect is something that is sold to us to get our money and to make us feel bad about ourselves. It's not realistic.
Right.
It's not realistic. It's a marketing technique. And that doesn't mean that it's not valid to wake up on some days and not feel entirely delighted with one's appearance. Right. I don't think that the goal should be to feel delighted with one's appearance 24/7.
Perfect. Yeah.
In my opinion, the goal is to be at peace with one's body. And that means that when feelings or thoughts come up, and they will as we all move through life, we can observe them, we can see them, we can be reminded that we live in this society in which we're told that appearance is the most important thing about us,
right?
And that we will inevitably not live up to that standard, and we cannot react to it. We can notice the thought, let it go, not feel that we have to behaviorally react to change our appearance in any way and not be affected by it too much. And I think for me, that would be an ideal position, is to have that flexibility and acceptance that there will be fluctuating feelings and thoughts, that this is part of life.
Right.
We live in this very demanding and unrealistic society, and that we don't have to engage in it.
Yes, I love that. It is being mindful for me. It says for me to be more mindful of the influences, to recognize, to filter out truth in terms of what I'm receiving. And like you said, like we've talked about, acceptance of where we're at. We're all doing our best.
Yeah.
And like you said, cherishing what we do have in terms of, I'm hearing this phrase in myself, I'm cherishing my aging body today. Is just a wonderful way of looking at it. I have been thinking too about others in my life and influencing them positively. One of the populations I've been thinking about are my kids. A lot of us midlifers have children who are adolescents or emerging adults. And can you talk a little bit about what you might suggest for parents of that age?
Yes, and this is such a great point. And I think it speaks to more of those outward facing things that I was mentioning. So parents have a huge influence on the way that children relate to their own bodies through two main pathways. One of them is through modeling. So as parents move through their lives, their children will observe them relating to their bodies in certain ways. Do they make comments about their own bodies? Do they change their behaviors in terms of eating and exercising? Do they avoid putting themselves in certain situations?
Right.
Those types of things. And children use those as cues to understand how one should feel about one's body. And so if a child sees a parent being accepting, being non-reactive to changes in their appearance, emphasizing other aspects of a person rather than appearance, those are all things that will help to foster positive body image in children.
Yes.
The other pathway is the way that parents directly relate to the children's bodies.
Yes.
So, do parents make comments about what their children are wearing, what they're eating, the way that they're moving their bodies or that they're not? Those are things that make a really big impact on children. It's really important to emphasize that parents are always well-meaning. I'm convinced parents are always well-meaning.
Right.
And sometimes their interventions can be paradoxically not particularly helpful.
Right. That's right. They see something, they want to fix it, they want it to be better. That's what we want in all aspects of parenting. Again, it comes back to mindfulness and getting our mind straight. I think for me, as I hear you talking about that, making sure that I exude acceptance of myself, acceptance of my body, value of other aspects of me in terms of how I treat people and what I'm creating or how I treat myself. It really starts from there, and I would imagine would exude out from there.
Exactly. And the more that parents can also convey unconditional acceptance of their children's bodies, the better.
Oh, I love it. I was just going to ask too about those of us in partnerships or marriage. And I think when a lot of them started, how has it started? A lot of them start by body, body attraction. It starts from there, and our relationships change and our bodies change. And I wonder if you have any other insights on that.
Yeah, that's another really important point. And obviously, those types of relationships, as you say, are special because there was physical attraction at the beginning, and maybe there still is, and maybe that's changing. But I think overall, the message is the same. We've actually been doing a little bit more work in midlife women this time, and I don't want to scoop any findings, but partner acceptance will be a helpful thing in relationships. And we also know in contrast that people who experience that their partners are dissatisfied about the way they look, or who experience their partners as being encouraging of them to seek things like cosmetic treatments, are more likely to do so.
Such great stuff. I could go on, Rachel, with this. Is there anything else you feel like we should know about this topic?
Yeah, I guess a couple of thoughts. One of them is that while we do all live in this culture, there are ways in which we can choose to expose ourselves to certain things or not. And that therefore, you've mentioned mindfulness several times, and I think it's so relevant. And cultivating a mindfulness of how we react to certain things, such as different types of media content, different types of social settings, and therefore using that to guide how we interact with the world is a helpful practice. We are not endlessly resilient. And therefore, being aware of how we're reacting to things and choosing to protectively filter what we expose ourselves to is a very important thing. The counterpart of that is that we also create culture. We contribute to it.
Yes.
And we are not powerless. And therefore, if we are indeed resistant to appearance ideals and believe that society is mistaken in placing such an important emphasis on people's appearance as part of their self-worth, that is a message we can relay. And we can do that through our interactions in our family settings, but we can also do it in other ways. If we see practices in our local community, in the Wellbeing Center, for example, that are emphasizing appearance and performance in ways that we think are not embodied, maybe that's something we can provide feedback about. Maybe we can show up on social media in ways that are diversifying the types of bodies that we see. Maybe if we have a high profile position, we can be visibly comfortable with our aging appearance. Maybe if we have a podcast, we can use that for platform spreading the message, all of these ways.
I love that. This is like, it's hitting all the notes of what I want to accomplish with this project in terms of being aware of ourselves, being aware of our authenticity, and making those small ripples that we can, those small changes outside of ourselves that shape our culture and make our smaller communities, and hopefully community by community, healthier. All right. There's so much to think about and digest. I know I'll be listening to this episode a few times myself. I know everybody listening here is very thankful for Rachel's work, and I look forward to sharing this episode with as many people as I possibly can. So thank you.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me and for talking about this important topic.
As we bring this episode on body image in midlife to a close, I really want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to Rachel Rogers for her insightful contribution. I sincerely hope that our discussion has sparked a shift in how we perceive ourselves and understand the influence of society and others on our body image. It was a great reminder for me that I'm on a journey of self-acceptance and growth, and it's okay to embrace where I'm at today. Let's continue to challenge societal norms and celebrate diversity in cultivating a positive and accepting environment. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep exploring, stay curious, and stay true to yourself.